Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. My name's Fiddle. In today's tutorial, we will be making a tiny stove for the tiny house we made last episode. Don't forget to check the link in the description that'll take you to the scavenger hunt where you can find the materials and a free printable pattern so you can make this stuff for yourself. The pattern does have all the pieces of furniture on it, but we're going to be focusing on the stove today. But keep your pattern handy because we will need it later on for the upcoming weeks. We're going to start by tracing our quarter circles onto thin wood. You could use larger size popsicle sticks for this, or even thick cardstock. Now we need to cut them out. I really like using my easy cutter as often as I can because it's so much easier on the hands than using an X-Acto or box cutter. When you have the pieces cut out, we can go ahead and sand them. We want to make the front curved edge a little bit beveled so it's not a straight hard edge. Okay, now we need to stack them up on top of each other, making sure they stay lined up so that way we get the hole in the right place and use our hand drill to drill through both pieces of wood. If by chance you happen to split your wood while you are drilling your holes, that's okay, you can glue them back together. Next, we'll need to cut the end of a fancy ended toothpick about an inch long. This is going to be the stove pipe for our stove, and it should sit down inside of the hole that we drilled. Set it aside for now and grab 4 fancy ended toothpicks. We're going to cut off just the very rounded nub at the end. Then using a combination of super glue and tacky glue, we can glue the tiny feet onto the base of the stove. The corner foot should be between the hole and the very corner of our piece. Then space the other 3 out along the front curved edge. Now we can cut out the last piece of our pattern, and this will be out of cardstock. You can make it as long or longer than what my pattern piece is, as long as it's a long enough strip to go around the stove. Use a ruler to get a hard right angle in the center. Then using a round tool like a pencil or pen, put a curve in one side of the cardstock. You may have to roll it back and forth a few times to get the shape to stay. Using the base of the stove as a guide, measure and cut off the excess. You'll want the edges of the paper to meet up on one of the side corners, not the back. And for the back corner, you will want to include the stovepipe inside of your cardboard, not on the outside. Once you have the piece cut, glue your 2 ends together. Then glue the cardstock to the bottom part of the stove. Before you glue the top piece on, set it inside of your house to make sure the sizes are right. You'll want it to be smaller than the doorway. And while you're test fitting, go ahead and stick the stovepipe in to make sure that it fits inside as well. Mine I cut just a smidge too short, and I ended up taking a really small bead cap and putting it on top of my stovepipe, but we'll get to that in a minute. Sorry if I sound a little bit nasally, I'm getting over the flu. Once you have your sizes right, go ahead and put the top on the stove. I still hadn't realized until this point that I really needed to make it shorter, so I had to take it apart and do it again. Before we add the burners and doors and stuff, it's a good idea to go ahead and give it a base paint. I am using a metallic black. It really gives it the look of cast iron. I also use this on my big stove and the pans that I've made in the past. You can get a metallic black color by using black and silver. While I was painting it, I decided that I really didn't like that top shelf that I had on there, and I ended up taking it off completely. If you wanted to keep that on there, you can. You just have to make your quarter circle a little bit smaller and cut it out of wood, just as we did before. For the doors, we're going to cut a strip of cardstock about 1/4 inch wide. The length will depend on how wide the front of your stove is. Then, just like we did for the cardstock on the rest of the stove, use your round tool to give it a little bit of a curve. Next, lay it across the front of your stove so you can decide where you want your 2 doors to be separated. Then mark you out a line. Now, instead of just cutting on the line, we're going to cut on either side of it so it gives us a little bit of a gap in between. Then glue your doors onto the front of the stove. I used plain old tacky glue. Now we are ready to add our burners. I used teeny tiny sequin for this and I put them dome side down so that way they kind of curl up on the edges and make it look a little more, I don't know. Maybe I could have put them the other way. I guess it really doesn't matter in the end, whatever you would like to do with yours. I put four burners on mine, three along the front and then one in the center towards the back. I know the footage is a little blurry and I'm sorry about that. I give you an after shot here of what the whole thing looks like. I got a new camera, so that won't happen as often. Unfortunately, it didn't come until after I had recorded all of the teeny tiny furniture, so I won't be able to use it for a full recording until the next piece, and I'm not quite sure what that will be. It'll either be either a bookshelf or a bed because that's what I need next for that room. To make teeny tiny handles for this, I used long barrel beads, but they were really small. You could use a tiny piece of wire, a piece of toothpick. There's all kinds of little things that you could use for handles. And the last thing to do is paint over the doors and the handles. Not only will this color it as it should be, but it will also help make sure that your little handles don't fall off. If you wanted to add some ash to make it look more realistic, you can use white and gray chalk, powder it down and use a paintbrush and water to dab it on. If you would like to see that done, check out my tutorial, stove out of yogurt cups, I believe I used it in. And that brings us to the end of this tutorial. I hope it gives you some ideas for your next project. And if you did enjoy it, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as it really helps me out a lot. Our next project will be the sink. Thank you, Ginger, and I'll see you next time.